OK, let's get more news on that. Martin Thomas has commissioned an independent review into England's World Cup failure, as well as the RFU's entire elite structure. We'll have more on that in just a moment, but let's head to David Haye's training camp, where Craig Slater is for us. Craig.
You say it's David Haye's training camp, but according to this piece of paper I've just been handed, boxing training is not something David Haye is going to be doing anymore, because he has officially announced his retirement from the sport. I'll just read you the first couple of paragraphs from this statement, if I may. He says, "Today's date is Thursday, October the 13th, 2011, and I've just turned 31 years of age. As the clock struck 12 last night, my professional boxing career came to an end. The decision to finish my career at this point was not a spur-of-the-moment thing, nor was it something forced upon me. In fact, it has been my intention to retire from the sport of boxing on this particular day ever since I first laced up the gloves as a skinny 10-year-old at the Fitzroy Lodge Amateur Boxing Club in Lambeth." So there we have it. I mean, he then goes on to detail all of the achievements he's had in the career, all the targets he's set himself. What he doesn't mention in this brief statement that he has released is that whether or not he could be tempted out of retirement to fight Vitaly Klitschko. As we've been reporting over the last couple of days on Sky Sports News, the Klitschko camp still believe it's possible to make a fight between Vitaly Klitschko, the WBC world champion, and David Haye. They think that fight could still happen on February or March of this year, but this statement seems to be to the contrary of that. So it looks as though, according to this, at face value anyway, that David Haye will not be lured out of retirement to box again. But it has been a wonderful career he has had. He has had many highs in it. I suppose maybe the only downside was that his brief reign at the very top level didn't include many great showcase fights, but David Haye, certainly a lot to look back on. He has been one of the foremost fight figures in the sport in this country over the last decade, and he is now calling an end to that time in the ring, and he's going to look to do something else with his life.
He'd hoped to hang up his gloves today as the unified heavyweight champion. That didn't happen. So will this be the last damage David Haye will do in a boxing ring? Britain's first World Amateur finalist launched his career with a fanfare in 2002, signalling he'd handle things his way, snubbing the sport's power brokers to self-promote with trainer Adam Booth. 10 straight cruiserweight victories came by knockout. Before, in 2004, he seemed to punch himself out against 40-year-old Carl Thompson. Haye rebuilt to become a European and later unified world champion at 14 stone 4. But the big purses and prestige fights were at heavyweight. He called out the Klitschko brothers at every opportunity.
Don't worry about the line of people. Fight the people who want to fight.
Then body swerved them to fight 7-foot Russian Nikolai Valuev. In November 2009, he became Britain's first heavyweight champion since Lennox Lewis.
David Haye is the WBA heavyweight champion of the world!
The victory made him a household name.
Nice.
And defences against John Ruiz and Audley Harrison showed his power could still be devastating at heavyweight, albeit against faded, and in Harrison's case, timid opposition. But that anticlimax was forgotten in March, as Haye signed to fight Vladimir Klitschko. Their old feud intensified as the fight drew near.
So you're cutting the head off, yeah? All right, I see. You're fighting actually a dead man there, right?
But again, the build-up proved better than the contest itself. Haye hardly won a round and blamed a broken toe for his performance. Still, the Klitschkos have offered a way back. Vitaly's ready to face Haye in the spring, but on his terms. So is this retirement brinkmanship? Or will he keep his long-term pledge, never to climb through the ropes again after today? Craig Slater, Sky Sports.
So David Haye's career as it stands, 27 fights, 25 wins, 23 by knockout, 2 defeats. But Craig, I mean, you know him very well. Many people might see this as a full stop after his career, but do you think potentially it's just a comma and we may well see him back in the ring again?
Yeah. Well, I have actually been handed another piece of paper which elaborates on the situation with the Klitschkos as things stand. We know that there is interest on the Klitschko's behalf, as I've been saying, for a fight with David Haye. David Haye has given his viewpoint on how things stand in that regard, and he basically says, no, the fight is out of the question with either of the Klitschko brothers in the new year. This is what he had to say about a potential showdown with Vitaly Klitschko. He said, Vitaly Klitschko did show an interest in sharing a ring with me in 2012, but since that initial declaration, we have heard the wrong kind of noises from Team Klitschko, which has left me thinking there is little chance of the fight ever coming to fruition. Little chance of the fight, that's perhaps significant language. He says, I would very much have enjoyed the idea of putting my retirement on hold for 6 months and going in against another champion no one would give me a chance of beating. I thrive on those sorts of fights, he says. Ultimately, though, he says, Team Klitschko are a business and they rarely take on tough opposition unless they are forced to. That is why Vladimir now fights my old victim, Jean-Marc Mormec, on December the 10th. And Vitaly will likely fight Chris Arreola in an unattractive matchup, as David Haye says, which will put the heavyweight division back in the doldrums. So, if we're to take this at face value, and David's just coming through now to speak to us, it seems that he has ruled out the possibility of fighting Vitaly Klitschko in the new year. But now we will hopefully hear it from the man himself, because here comes David Haye. I'll just step out the way. David,
hey,
how are you, man?
Not
You're
bad,
right, you're looking good.
Really good, really good.
I have to say, first of all, I know it's an auspicious day. You're announcing your retirement. We have to say happy birthday to you, too.
Thank you very much, thank you very much.
31, you're looking good on it after 20 years in a boxing ring and in the boxing game. But we heard this week that you hadn't renewed your license. You weren't going to do that. We also heard from Bernd Bonte, the Klitschko's manager, that there was still negotiations going on, that you could fight in February or March of next year. You've released this statement now saying that is not going to happen. Why won't it happen?
If you look back through any of my interviews throughout the years, I've always said, you know, I'm not going to fight into my 31st year. Here we are, I'm 31 now, so that's it. You know, I love boxing, you know, I love training, I love ring about boxing, but you got to call it a day sooner or later. I know too many fighters over the years who have gone on way too long, and now's a great time. I feel healthy. I'm in my prime. There's no damage, you know. So why not?
But I guess all of those reasons might be, you know, potentially why you might carry on.
That's why a lot of boxers end up getting injured and hurt. And people always say to them, you won too many fights. That's why you're in the condition you're in. And you know, I've never wanted to be that guy. That's not why I was in boxing. Now, as you said from the statement, myself and Adam Booth, we sat down before I turned professional, and we said, right, we're gonna. You know, we've got to win as many titles as we can. You know, we've got to go out there, fight the best champions, real champions, not, you know, bogus titles. You know, I won the WBC, WBA, WBO titles. They were genuine, real titles against the linear #1 fighter. You know, I went over onto foreign soil to do that, and you know, I won those titles. I unified the titles. I went up to heavyweight, fighting guys, you know, who were way bigger than me, way stronger, way heavier, and found a way to beat them. You know, defended the title twice. You know, it's a right gutter that I didn't manage to beat Vladimir. You know, that would have been, you know, the cherry on the cake, you know, but it was not meant to be.
But you say in the statement as well, it's partly of the way the Klitschkos do business that this 2012 fight will not happen. What kind of deal would have been the sort of business which would have meant that you would have taken part in that fight?
You know,
could you look for a 50-50 split or 60-40 where they're offering you less than that?
It was never, you know, believe me, I'd love nothing better than to knock Vitaly Klitschko out. You know, Adam's had to deal with the burn anyway, obviously tying up all the finances from the fight with Vladimir in July. So obviously, Burns obviously talked to him about a possibility, and from what Adam's told me, you know, they're not even, they believe I'm just another, you know, another challenger out there. And if that's how they see me, you know, good luck to them. Let them carry on and fighting the guys they're used to fighting. But you know, I know what I'm about. I know, you know, the draw. I know what I bring to the table, and you know, I understand their business when they want to do business. But you know, I don't have to no longer be part of that.
You don't, and you're, as you say, businessmen and promoters yourself. So maybe might the question be asked, is this not one last piece of brinkmanship to try and bring them to the table with terms you would accept?
If it was something I just came up with last week, yeah, but I've been saying this when I was an amateur. I always said this is the date I was always going to retire. People keep saying, oh, you're just saying this because you're trying to negotiate. This has always been the date. It's not, if it was something I came up with a couple of months ago, then you could say, OK, this has always been the date. It just coincidentally happened to be here. And, you know, I coincidentally happened to lose my last fight, unfortunately. But, you know, it's the way the cookie crumbles. You know, in life, you don't, you know, I always set the bar as high as I possibly can. In my amateur career, my professional career, you know, I've always wanted the best titles. I always wanted to fight the champion on their terms, in their backyard, to make it as hard as possible with myself. So when I do win it, I get the most amount of acclaim for it. And I tried to do the best I could and fight the best possible fighter out there, Vladimir, for his titles, you know, on his turf, pretty much on his terms, pretty much the whole way round. It didn't work out, you know, and as long as you set your sights high, you know, even though I fell short, you know, I was a former 2-weight world champion, you know, one of the most successful British boxers ever.
Yeah. Is this also a way of showing that you are not primarily motivated by money, by taking one more last payday? You want to make that clear?
There's always one more payday. There always is one more payday. You know, I talk to any fighter, you know, I'm sure there'd be another payday for Mike Tyson if he wanted to. There's always a payday. You know, but myself and Adam, we've been pretty shrewd in the way we've done business, the way we've structured my career from day one to the point where I don't have to do anything. I haven't had to fight for the last 3 or 4 years. I didn't have to have a heavyweight career. You know, I could have retired after my cruiserweight days. You know, financially it was okay from then, but this is just something, you know, it was always my target. When I was a little kid, I promised my mum I'd be the heavyweight champion in the world. I've always been the heavyweight champion. It's always got that special ring to it. And, you know, I was the heavyweight champion of the world, and no one could ever take that away from me.
David, we're running out of time there. I have to say it's been a fantastic ride with you over the years. You've achieved virtually everything you wanted to. Now it's time to call it a day. We wish you all the very best in the future. But, yeah, you heard it here first. David Haye has hung up the gloves.
Craig, thank you very much indeed. Happy birthday to David Haye as well. Up next, we'll have